Welcome to a special edition of the AICPA Town Hall Series. We know this is a very busy week with the October 15th tax deadline, but there's some important information that we want to share with you. So welcome, Lisa, and
Thanks,
we'll
Eric.
get right into it. So just going to be Lisa Simpson and myself this week. I'm Eric Auskerson, the president and CEO of CPA.com, AICPA's business and technology subsidiary, and Lisa leads the firm services area for the AICPA. So we're first just going to talk about what's going on in Washington, D.C. And I'm sure you're all paying attention to all of the discussions around PPP2 and additional business stimulus. There's a lot going on, a lot of activity between the White House and the House, Pelosi and Mnuchin in the Senate. So here's where it stands right now. There's currently planned a vote next week in the Senate, which will either be on the skinny heels or PPP2. That's the current outlook right now. We've continued to say it's a question of when, not if, related to additional stimulus. Unfortunately, it does feel like things are frozen a little bit, and it's beginning to look like this may not happen before the elections. We're advocating for more stimulus for these businesses, these small businesses that have been impacted. We're watching it daily, and that's the latest information. It's looking less likely, but it's still a question of when, not if. So getting ready makes sense. The other big announcement that came out was related to the simplified forgiveness, which Lisa is going to be getting into shortly. Let's now just kind of reflect on what's happening in the media. I just mentioned that the Senate, McConnell, is looking to force a vote on some type of relief stimulus action next week. And we're also beginning to see more and more stories about the small businesses that really need this lifeline. So our hope is something does happen. So Lisa, with that, let's get into what occurred around the 3508S. We've got a new form. So I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks, Eric. So we did get this S, which Eric and I are thinking means simplified. And it's welcome news for small borrowers who may just be uncertain about how to actually fill out an application form. So you've got this 3508S. The only math that you put on the front of the application is the forgiveness amount that's being requested. So there's a look at it, and then we'll get into some of the details on the next slide. It did come out on October 8th. There is also an interim final rule that goes along with it. And the interim finals have become a fascinating read for me because they give you some of the insights into why Treasury and SBA are making some of the decisions that they are making. And if you read between the lines, maybe some of the reasons they're not doing some of the things that we're looking for. But let's start with what we know. The 3508S is for borrowers who have a loan of $50,000 or less, unless they're part of an affiliated group that received loans totaling $2 million or more. The attractiveness of this S form is that it automatically eliminates the need to calculate any penalties for a reduction in full-time equivalents or employee salaries or wages. There is a catch. There are a couple catches. There are certifications that have to be given by the borrower, and those certifications are mainly around did the borrower use the funds in the way that the program says? Did they use it for payroll and the eligible non-payroll costs? Do payroll costs represent at least 60% of the amount that they're requesting for forgiveness? And then there's some other certifications that I would encourage you to just take a look at if you're working with borrowers on whether or not to use that form. Documentation is required to be submitted to the lender. So Eric likes to point out that this is for loans of $50,000 or less. So just a few employees would get you to that amount. So a payroll report may be really simple. If you're using a payroll provider, they've probably prepared a PPP report for you. So you pull that report, add in any non-payroll costs for utilities, mortgage interest, and lease payments, document all of that and submit that to the lender. So from our perspective, you can leverage the AICPA calculator. We'll have a new one up for this 3508S, but the CPA platform, or the loan forgiveness platform that we'll talk about in just a minute, is also going to be updated to provide this 3508 option. So you upload the documentation, submit it to the lender, keep it on file for the 6-year required period of time. If you look at the reaction to the S form coming out, a lot of people were frustrated that it wasn't automatic forgiveness. And if you look through the IFR, you'll see that the Treasury and SBA are trying to comply with the intent of the law. They're trying to use de minimis eligibility requirements, but still ask the borrower to certify that the funds were used for payroll and the other eligible costs. So no automatic forgiveness, but certainly streamlined forgiveness for those smaller borrowers. Next.
Yeah, and I just would like to highlight one thing. We've been talking about documentation since April, and we think the simplified application makes sense. I know, Lisa, you had a discussion with Treasury on this, and just some documentation does make sense because, as we've said, there's going to be third-party reviews down the road, and it's just good to have the file complete. So hopefully this will be well received by the marketplace.
Absolutely. I wanted to point out, now we've got 3 forms. One is under 50,000 that we just talked about. You've still got the EZ, so that's going to be perfect for your self-employed who had no employees when they applied, or if they don't have a wage reduction or penalty but are over 50,000. If those don't work for you, then you've got the full Form 3508. We'll get into these in more detail in a future town hall about maybe when to consider using one versus the other, but I did just want to get this out there for you to start thinking about. Also to think about, actually, sorry, you're right. Moving on to this one, sorry. We also got an FAQ unexpectedly this week. We had been getting some questions on the town hall about the expiration date on the forms, and the SBA came out this week and said that the deadline on the application forms does not mean that's the deadline, or the expiration date does not mean that's the deadline to apply for forgiveness. You still have 10 months after the last day of the covered period to apply for forgiveness. Or I'm sorry, strike that. You still have up until the maturity date of the loan to apply for forgiveness, and then payments will begin if you haven't applied 10 months after the end of the covered period. So don't panic about that October 31 expiration date on the top of those forms. They'll issue new forms with an extended expiration date. We've shown this slide the last couple of weeks, and I just want to keep it up there because we're getting new details about some of these points. Today's is around the under over the dollar amount of potential simplification. So right now we've gotten that new form for 50,000. There are ongoing discussions around that $150,000 mark, or a tiered system between 150 and 2 million. So you've just got to stay informed on what's going on in the conversations. We do not know when that legislation is going to move, as Eric pointed to, but we'll keep you in the loop on that. So these are the other things that you'll want to be talking to your client about, or if you're the borrower, things for you to be considering.
And just to highlight again, I mean, it's around the deductibility issue. And what we're hearing from a lot of firms is they're just going to do, even with this 3508S, they'll make sure they get all the documentation together, and they're just not going to hit submit or have the client hit submit on the forgiveness application, and they'll postpone that until 2021, and they'll be able to deduct the expenses in 2020, and then by 2021, it's looking likely that by that time, this deductibility issue will be rectified by Congress. So Lisa, anything else you want to share on that slide? So now, there's 3 points we just want to make here when you think about where you're at with your forgiveness capabilities, your PPP capabilities, and also about your capabilities to support the next phase of business relief. Every week in these town halls, we receive hundreds of questions, and everyone's trying to understand now the 500 pages that go into the PPP Act, all of the IFRs that have followed it, all of the FAQs that have followed it, and now this continuing release of new forms, the 3508S being the most recent. And what we are seeing is that firms are saying, we're going to put processes and capabilities in place. And we took the AICPA forgiveness calculator and we built a fintech, we leveraged a fintech provider to put a platform together that would provide guardrails and guidance for firms that are looking to do the forgiveness process. And we're also going to be prepared to support the next round of PPP2 funding, which is a question of when, not if. In the most basic version of this, there's no cost for, but even the next versions, they're basically almost free. I mean, this is a very valuable tool. So we just encourage you to start putting in place capabilities as you stay informed on the weekly town halls about the latest guidance. So it's like it's very similar to the tax service line that you support. You're always staying up to date on what's happening with the IRS rules and legislation, IRS rulings, but you're also using a platform to support the tax compliance. And this business relief category is going to be with us into 2021 and 2022. So we just encourage you to think about that capability. And also when PPP2 does happen, it's going to happen very fast. And we will be in a position to support the firms and their clients with those applications. One other hot topic is .CPA. Today is October 14th. There's 16 more days left in this early application phase. So I encourage you just to stay and make sure you're informed about that, and go to domains.cpa for additional information. This is kind of a little bit of an error slide here, because one thing we did want to share with you is tomorrow there is going to be a webcast with 2 representatives from Congress, one out of New York, a Democrat out of New York, and a Republican out of Oklahoma. And we will be discussing the latest on business relief. This will be with our Biz2Credit partner, Biz2Credit. It's at 2 p.m. and we will be tweeting out the registration information to that. This is a free event. And Lisa, this is covering up the SBA resource page for the AICPA. Anything that you'd like to add?
That's okay. I'll just really quickly remind you of the URL. It's aicpa.org/SBA, and that's where you'll find all of the calculators and the FAQs that we referenced throughout our presentation.
So we're always bringing the latest available information, and that was a very recently developed slide. Lisa?
So we always like to remind you to go back and pull out an archived version of the town hall. So these are some of the topics we've covered recently. As a reminder, October 8th, so just a week ago or so, we had the notice about how to report a change in ownership of a PPP borrower when it requires approval, processes for notifying the lender, and those kinds of things. So some good information in that Town Hall Archive if you have that topic coming up with one of your PPP borrowers.
So that brings us to the conclusion of this special edition. We look forward to seeing hopefully most of you next Thursday, October 22nd at 3 p.m. And you are auto-registered now for these town halls unless you opt out. If you'd like to register, here's the link for new registrations. And do stay connected via our LinkedIn and Twitter accounts. Both Lisa and I are regularly posting updates. We greatly appreciate the engagement with you and hope you have a good closeout of the October 15th tax deadline. Lisa?
Thanks, Eric. See you guys next week.
See you next week.